And the third and final item in our regular contributors section this week is from Alan Taylor Shearer, where he gives us an update on what he's been doing on his podcast, Alan's Antics This Week. To access his main podcast, you can click through from this item, or access it from the menus on the main webpage at www.RadioFreeUK.org. And some of his items will include later in the main show. Take it away, Alan.
This week on Alan's Antics, German minister says that they shouldn't discuss fantasy proposals for a Brexit scenario. This is a short report from News Republic, but it's very important and very telling because they obviously have decided that Brexit isn't going to make any difference at all if it happens. And I also suspect they've also decided that it's not going to happen. But anyway, Germany's foreign minister said that a British vote to leave the European Union would create a negative dynamic in the remainder of the EU, but that Berlin should not discuss any proposals for dealing with such a scenario. Because, as far as they're concerned, Brexit isn't going to happen. So, whatever we vote, it seems, according to this guy, nothing's going to change. Some have suggested that since the EU cannot throw the UK out, one way would be for the UK government to use a no vote in the referendum as a de facto negotiating mandate. This would depend on the EU's willingness to negotiate an exit before Article 50 was triggered. So they have to decide whether they want to allow us to leave, or they want to even talk about it, which is exactly what I said earlier. Similarly, any alternative mechanism for exit would need to be devised and agreed by the rest of the EU, a significant gesture of goodwill. You see, it's up to the other 27 member states whether we leave or not you and me. Nevertheless, any potential agreement with the UK struck with the EU at any point after withdrawal would come up against the same dynamics as Article 50, most notably requiring approval by EU leaders, MEPs and national parliaments. Therefore, unless the UK is truly prepared to go it alone, any unilateral withdrawal option is tricky. Because the other 27 member states can just say, no, you can't leave. And that would be that. Isn't the EU a democratic place to live? Aren't you pleased that you live in such a free and open dictatorship? If you're listening to this via my page on Alan's Antics at RadioFreeUK.org, well, you'll have seen the video where Angela Merkel just throws away her own national flag. That's nice of her, isn't it? That's respectful for your nation that, gave you everything. Yeah, well done. If you haven't seen it, well, pop along to YouTube and just search for Merkel throws away German flag. Who are you to lecture us, Mrs. Merkel? German Chancellor accused of trying to bully Britain into staying in the EU. EU Commission Chief Jean-Claude Juncker, or however you pronounce his name, I always get it wrong, on purpose sometimes, claimed Britons were by far more pro-Europe than they let on. Is that so? Jean-Claude, Jean-Claude, whatever your name is. Is that so? You really think so? You've been down into, I don't know, let's say Tottenham, or the middle of Birmingham, or the middle of Glasgow, or Sheffield, and just popped around and asked a few people, are you pro or against the EU? You've done that, have you? Yourself? No, I don't think so. So how can you possibly say that Britons were by far more pro-Europe than they let on? You complete and utter pillock. From the Washington Post, a British vote to leave the EU could shatter the United Kingdom. When Scotland voted in an independence referendum in September 2014, nationalist leaders pitched in as a once-in-a-generation chance to break the 3-century-old bond. But less than 2 years after Scots opted to remain in the United Kingdom, the spectre of secession again looms over the lush green expanse of the British Isles. The trigger this time is another referendum, the vote on whether to leave the European Union. This vote is one of the biggest decisions that our generation is going to have to make. That is what campaigners on both sides told Scots in the lead up to the 2014 referendum. But these days, such monumental decisions are coming often, and there could be another one looming. Indeed, Salmon said that a second independence referendum will be held sooner or later, regardless of which way Britain votes in the referendum. Independence is inevitable, he said. We're just debating the timescale now. Well, that was just a little snapshot of the week on Alan's Antics on RadioFreeUK.org. To hear the full recordings and a whole lot more, go to RadioFreeUK.org. And there'll be more next week. Take care and have a safe one.